This is Six Tackles with Gus, with Matthew Thompson and Gus Gould.
Welcome to Six Tackles. Great to be with you for another week. Origin 3, 7 days away from the Cauldron at Suncorp. The teams are in camp. We'll have a look at that. Jason Ryles has been named to coach Parramatta from next year. What difference will he make in turning that club around? Nicho Hynes is off for surgery. That's a worry for the Sharks. And a festival of football planned for Vegas in 2025. I'm sure Gus will be there, ready to rip in with all the Vegas locals. Welcome, Gus.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
Very good.
That's all right.
Just see the lineup for Vegas, not just the two NRL games, but a Gillaroos test against England. And there's a Super League game too.
We predicted that, didn't we?
Yeah.
We said that will get bigger and bigger. Absolutely. It'll be. I'm actually thinking about going next year. I guess the Bulldogs are going to have to go at some stage, so I might have to go on a study tour and
Yes, a recce.
go across and have a look at how it all operates.
Do you need anyone to accompany you?
I might need a couple
chaperone?
of people. Yeah, I don't carry much luggage, but
I'm available.
see
Your
how we
people
go.
can talk to my people.
Okay.
Hey, a bit of breaking news as we come on air. We're in the middle of a US presidential election campaign, which is just farcical. But anyhow, Donald Trump has just challenged Joe Biden to a $20 million round of golf. He's giving Joe Biden 20 shots and he can play off the women's tees.
This is our.
20,
This is the presidential election.
Can you believe 20 shots?
So 350 million people in the US. 350 million is the population,
Yeah.
and these are the best two they've got.
Oh, mate.
Seriously.
So have you seen Donald Trump's golf swing?
Yeah,
Mate.
horrendous.
There's one of the best, I might have mentioned this before. If you're looking for a great book to read, there's a book called Commander in Cheat. And it's about Donald Trump's life in golf
Right.
and how he is just a certified cheat. If he was a member of your garden variety golf club here in Australia, he would last 2 rounds before they kicked him out.
Fair dinkum.
Like he's played match play with Tiger Woods and whoever and cheated. He gets it. He's got a cart that is like a hot rod that he hits his shot, doesn't wait for anyone else, jumps in his cart, it tears down the fairway, he finds his ball, puts it where he wants it. Then everyone else has to follow it. No one else can argue because no one saw him.
Well, he owns the golf course, doesn't he? He can
I
go
know.
where he likes.
And he's the club champion and the senior club champion. He can't hit the ball.
It's farcical. Leaders of the free world.
Oh. And Joe Biden was telling everyone he's off 6.
And we want to follow off 6.
Yeah. He's off 6.
That must be his tee time. He's off at 6.
20 million.
He'd be lucky to find the first tee.
Who would you be back in there, Trump or Biden? Oh, my goodness. And I saw this other funny story. I thought I'd throw a little bit of funny stuff in today. So Socceroo star Daniel Arzani snuck himself into an amateur team at the weekend. He's 25. He plays with the Melbourne Victory. But he played with his junior club, Coogee United, against Alexandria Locomotive in the 6th division. 6th division, they lost 3-2, which reminded me, remember the time Junior Polo played 4th grade club rugby and disguised himself with a set of headgear and hoped no one would notice?
There's been a few of those over the years. The funniest story I ever heard about a ring-in actually was a golfing story.
Right.
And it involved Jack Newton, one of Australia's great golfers of the past. And, of course, we all know Jack had that accident and lost his arm and nearly killed himself. But I heard Jack talk at a luncheon once. And I can't remember the story exactly how it happened, but I know the gist of it. So in America in the old days, he was on the US tour, and I think he ran second in a Masters over there at one stage. But there used to be a lot of cash games on the side, and he had some mates who liked to go away and gamble on golf pretty heavily, and they went down to this trip to play these really rich blokes down in Texas, and they went down, and golfers weren't as well known back then as they used to be, but as they are today. But they went down, and instead of calling him Jack Newton, they introduced him as Jack Slazenger.
Jack
Slazenger. So Jack Slazenger goes down there, and they play in this 2-day golf thing with these blokes who are betting pretty heavily.
So they hadn't met him before?
They hadn't met him.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Introduced Jack Newton as Jack Slazenger. So he's gone down there and he shot 67, 68. And they've taken all their money. And it's a lot of money. It's back in the day, but it's a lot of cash money. They've won all this cash money, you know. He said, about 8 months later, he said, I'm playing in the Masters at Augusta. And he said, I'm on the practice green before I go out and I'm having a few putts. And I could hear this. I can't swear. I could hear this voice from the crowd saying, "Stuff you, Jack Slazenger." The bloke from Texas has recognised him, and he started hurling abuse at him.
Oh, that's too good.
Because Jack Slazenger had taken all their money.
Did they notice that he's got his set of golf clubs named after him? Jack Slazenger?
I think it had Slazenger on the bag. That's why he called himself Jack Slazenger.
Oh, that's too funny.
I'm pretty sure that's. But yeah, he said, I'm putting on the Augusta putting green. I could hear, "Stuff you, Jack Slazenger."
Oh, too good. The Australians outsmart them again. The fine cotton ring-in was the famous one, but there's so many retellings of that story. The ring-ins were pretty common back on the racetrack in the day.
Oh yeah, greyhounds. Yeah. Oh yeah, Yep. My good mate, who was a SB bookmaker for a long, long time, back in the old days, he was a legal bookmaker. He used to be an illegal bookmaker on the Snowy Mountain scheme. When the Snowy Mountain scheme was being built, he used to be the big bookmaker down there.
Oh, with all the workers.
Yeah, and he said, never bet on anything that talks.
Oh, dear. Very funny. Gus, your team of the week. Now, the Rabbits beat Para, team of last week, that is.
Yep.
Titans, very good against the Sharkies. What about your Dogs? Another 1 point win and another one that bounced off the post and went over. Roosters gave it to the Dragons. They've scored 100 points minimum. I think it might be a bit more than that. 100 points in 2 games against them this year. And Manly somehow beat the Cowboys, who slaughtered that. And, of course, Penrith over the Broncos in what was probably the best quality game of the weekend, although the Warriors-Bulldogs game was very good. What are your observations out of all of that?
Yeah, there were some really good performances, even by a couple of the beaten teams as well, I thought, as well. Yeah, I think I'm warming more and more that the Roosters are very, very capable of winning this premiership. Looking at Melbourne and Penrith, they're not what they used to be. They're certainly the best 2 teams in the competition at the moment. And if I had to pick grand finalists, one of those will be in it. I just think Roosters might be the other one, the way it's going at the moment.
Neither Panthers nor Melbourne have been at full strength pretty much the whole year.
The whole year, so it's hard to determine. And I still think if Penrith get it right, if Penrith get every player on the field and they get it right, they're in with a second to none chance of making it 4 in a row. I still think their best is probably better than anyone's. And they seem to have the wood on the Roosters. They beat the Roosters earlier this year when they were under strength on a Friday night game out there, just blotted them out. And Roosters really got frustrated. But the Roosters with this roster and how they're sort of warming to the task, and you can only think they're going to improve between now and the end of the season once the rep season's over. They're in with an undeniable chance.
Yeah. Just with Penrith, I've got this nagging feeling, and I've sort of had it since the start of the year. Like, when it gets really hard in the finals, like at the end of the year, like, have they got the reserves? Like, does it get too much for them at some stage?
I don't think so. I think they're battle hardened, and I think that all their key players are all 80-minute players. There's no doubt it's been diluted over the last few years with players that they've lost, but they've still got a core group of players there that just know how to win those big games, and I just don't see the opposition have improved enough to make up the leeway if, in fact, they get it right. Their biggest opposition last year was the Broncos, and everyone expected the Broncos to be much, much better this year. They find themselves outside the 8 at the moment. They've got a nice draw, and they will get some players back, and I expect them to make the 8. But so far as grand final winners at the moment, for my money, Roosters are shortening a lot in the betting, and I still think the Panthers are the best side in the comp.
All right, well, my first question in yes, no will be an interesting answer from you.
Yes! No.
That's the rule.
No. Dear.
The Bulldogs can make the grand final.
Oh, give me a break.
What?
What?
That's my question. Hey-ya!
What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say?
I don't know. I just asked
On
the
whose
question.
radar was that at the start of the year?
No one.
No one.
But it's on mine now.
Why is yeah, go on. Okay.
Well,
They're doing really well. Can't you just be happy with what they're doing?
yeah, I know, but what they're tough. They're super tough.
They are tough.
Super, super tough. That can take you a long way in this comp.
It has already.
Yeah.
It has already. I'm very pleased with them. But one day at a time.
You answered that very well. At least you said yes. Billy Slater will be the next coach of the Melbourne Storm. Oi!
Well, I'll put it this way. I think they would like it to be.
Yeah.
I think they would like it to be.
Seems like all's falling into place.
Yeah, I've got a kind of like a little bit of inside information on that, and I think that the Melbourne Storm are going to be as patient as it takes for Billy Slater. Billy Slater is at a position in his life where he's got a young family. He's got great interest outside of rugby league down there through horse racing and his breeding business, and he loves that sort of lifestyle. He's got the two best jobs in the world. He's working at Channel 9 and he's coaching the Queensland Origin team. It's probably not on Billy's radar at the moment to actually devote himself full-time to a coaching gig. I'm quite sure the Melbourne Storm would like that to happen, but I think they're going to be very patient with it until it's at a point in Billy's life where he decides, okay, now that's what I want to do.
So you think Melbourne are waiting for Billy?
Well, not in the short term. I think they're happy to take a decade if that's what it takes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I don't think Billy's got any intention of doing it anytime soon. I don't think he's going to bow out of what he's doing anytime soon.
So you think he will be a Storm coach at some stage?
I would guarantee 100% at some stage of his life he'll be a Storm coach.
Ooh, like that.
Well, yeah. I would be confident that would happen. But it might not happen for another 10 years. Billy's still a young man. He's still got a lot of other things. He may never get around to it. I don't know. But
So what's your inside mail?
well, no, I'm just saying that. I think Melbourne Storm would love to see that in their future, and I think they're happy to take as long as it takes.
Okay.
I don't think there's any pressure on Billy to have to make a decision. He's got the two great jobs now.
Well, Craig Bellamy's been going to retire for 5
Years and
years.
years ago, Peter Sterling, when I first started here at Channel 9, Peter Sterling said to me, he said, I've been sort of approached around coaching. I've been thinking about maybe NRL coaching. What do you think? I said, you've got the best job in Australia now. I said, you can sit up here and coach all 16 teams. I said, why would you want to, give away what you got and coach one? And I've got no doubt he could have done it, but, he had a great job and he had a great career and it served him well. And I think Billy Slater's got, like coaching Queensland, it's the biggest and best job in Australia, football-wise, and he's working here at Channel 9. Why would he want to change his life? He's breeding horses. He's got a young family. He's able to get to their junior sport. He's able to do all that at the moment. That all goes out the window if you want to be a head coach.
Yep.
People don't understand the hours it takes and the sacrifice it takes, and in Melbourne, how much travel that takes. It's a huge commitment. It's a huge commitment. I wouldn't be rushing into it.
You sent me those guys that do that weekly cartoon on the NRL. They're very funny. Did you see that the Craig Bellamy head sitting in the box? He was dead, but
they'll be able to.
He was still coaching while he was dead.
They'll be able to clone him through artificial intelligence, and just ask him a question. He'll be able to give you the. Artificial intelligence is creepy. It is unbelievably creepy. What artificial intelligence is doing.
Who are those blokes that do that? What do they call those blokes? We should give them a plug. They're funny. They do a weekly cartoon.
I don't know
about the round.
Someone sent it to me. I sent it on to you.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll find out the name and give them a plug. They're very funny. They do like a news summary of the week that was in rugby league, but it's a bit colourful. Okay, question number 3. We'll see the Biff in Origin 3.
There's no Biff in rugby league anymore.
It's tense.
It'll be tense.
It's tense. The tension's building. It's palpable.
I think under the old adage that you can't win it in the first 20 minutes, but you can certainly lose it, which both New South Wales has done in Game 1 and Queensland have done in Game 2, I think the first 20 minutes of this, I wouldn't be missing that. I wouldn't be getting a cup of tea while that's on, because the first 20 minutes is going to be extremely willing. Queensland have got to make a statement after their poor performance in Game 2, and New South Wales will be out to do what they did in Game 2 and get the ascendancy early. A lot of pressure on that Queensland forward pack to stand up in this game. They can lose this in the first 20 minutes if they're not on their game. Now, in front of their Queensland faithful up there at Lang Park, I don't expect that to be the case, but I think, you're calling it Biff. It's not Biff, but there'll be some bump, I can tell you.
Well, I've put that to you, knowing you'd probably say no, but there's this rhetoric coming from New South Wales that they don't want to be stood over anymore, and that's been inflamed by the media. They've isolated incidents in Game 2 and whatever, and then some of the old Origin blokes came out saying stand over him, and then the Queensland guys want them to stand up.
Yeah, and everyone wants to hear that talk, and everyone likes it in the build up to big games, grand finals. Everyone wants to hear it, but no one wants to put up with it if it happens. The game's not going to tolerate it. And we saw what happened in Game 1 when someone had to leave the field and they're down to 12 men. I don't think either side can risk that by throwing a punch. Because I don't necessarily agree with the rule or the interpretation of it, or the dangers of that sort of thing on the field. But that's the people in charge of the game make those rules. There'll be no Biff. I don't think anyone's going to be stupid enough to do that. But it's going to be extremely willing. Mm-hmm. Extremely willing. And when that happens, things can go wrong. I wouldn't miss it. No. I would not miss this. New South Wales have lost 2 series in a row. They have to win this game. They have to win this game. They can't let Queensland get away with another one.
So do you think the aggressive, the likelihood of that intense aggression has been one of the reasons behind Michael Maguire bringing Mitch Barnett into the 17? Clearly, Oli Kawatu was playing more of a middle role than an edge role, so he's gone with a player who is more versed in playing in the middle firstly, but he's a firebrand, Mitch Barnett.
Yeah, he is. The way I've looked at it, I think they've struggled to get Oli Kawatu into the game. I think he's been on the bench, but, Crichton and Liam Martin are both 80-minute players. They're both really good performers, and sometimes you've got a bloke on the bench and you sit there and you think, how am I going to get him out there? How am I going to get him out there? I'll get him out there now. And it's kind of like, and Olakau'atu will have even felt like he hasn't really contributed in the 2 games that he's been there. He hasn't been out there for long. He's been there at a part of the game where the game was probably over by the time he got out there. So I think, and Barnett's form has been really good for the Warriors. I think I can see the sense in that. And it's kind of like in Michael Maguire's persona as well. I think he thinks this game is going to be won very much on toughness and grit. Not that I'm saying Olakau'atu hasn't got it, but Olakau'atu is a very skillful player, and I think they've just struggled to get him into the game. And maybe they've thought, well, okay, we can get Barnett into the game a bit easier than Olakau'atu. Yeah, playing him in the middle.
So Bradman best for Latrell after he played so well in Melbourne. It's a cruel blow for Latrell. It was a joyous return to Origin football, but Bradman best, he's had 1 game in the dead rubber last year, scored 2 tries, and seems tailor-made for that environment.
Yeah, I thought it was an automatic choice.
Yeah,
in that game. He's good, Bradman, and I don't think they lose anything there whatsoever. I know Latrell went good, and it was probably over-publicised how well he went. He was certainly on the end of a very, very good team, and I think Bradman best, whatever Latrell could do for us, Bradman best will be able to do the same for us if he gets those opportunities next Wednesday night. Good, tough performer. He's a hard worker.
Now, from a Queensland perspective, is Harry Grant going to play?
I think if he does play, it's a risk.
Do you really?
Yeah.
So it's that bad, the sternum?
Well, sternums don't repair in 2 weeks, let me tell you. I did one in 1983, and if I touch it there now, it's still sore.
Really?
Yeah, they're terrible.
So you'd be no good?
Depends where it is in his sternum, and depends where it is and what sort of injury it was. But he has missed a couple of games for the Melbourne Storm, and they've been important games for them. He hasn't played since Origin 2. My mail is that, I might be wrong. Billy's saying he's bounced in, he's ready to go. Well, that's good if he is, but my mail is that it's a risk, which is why they brought Reid Marnie into the squad.
Okay. Well, he hasn't been at his dynamic best, Harry Grant. I mean, he's
injured.
Yeah.
I don't know how long he's had it. I don't know whether he got it in Origin 2 or he had it prior to Origin 2. There's sorts of things that players continue to try to play with, and there's probably, there'll be 8 or 10 forwards out there in the NRL right now playing with sternum injuries. They're painful things to, and it's just where on your sternum it is and how inflamed it gets, and it's an area that's got no flesh. It can't be needled. It's very, very hard to give it any sort of pain-killing assistance. And if you get it in the wrong place, it's like a knife in your chest the whole time, even when you breathe, but let alone get a collision. And what they do is they wear these big guards on top of their chest, and it's particularly vulnerable to players who try to tackle with their chest a little bit. You'll see some fellas that are a bit open-armed and tackle. They don't actually get in with their shoulder. It can happen sometimes with an elbow or a knee or anything, or a head that gets jammed into your chest bone there. It's an extremely painful injury. Like I say, you can play with most things above the waist, but once you've got it, it's very, very hard, and particularly for the smaller blokes who tend to tackle open-chested, right? Because that's where they're going to constantly get knocks, which means they can be pushed off pretty comfortably. And with him doing so much passing out of dummy half, just depending again where it is, and this is speculation, but it can be something that inhibits your passing game as well, particularly your long passing game. So if he's got a sternum injury, and my mail is that he has, and it would explain why he's been absent from the Melbourne Storm games, then he may well play for Queensland next week. They may think they can needle it, but I think it's a risk. But there'll be other players playing out there with injury. He won't be the only one.
But if he goes down, they do have Hunt that can play the 80 minutes. And Ponga, of course, the other. So there's 2 utility-style players on the bench.
Well, you get the feeling that's why they've covered it.
Yeah.
That's what I think. And even bringing Reid Marnie into the squad, right? And Reid's been going really well, and he's competitive, and it'll do him a great experience just to be around there. But, Reid's been a bit tight-lipped since he left Belmore.
Ooh.
So I just don't know.
Would you revisit my question about there being Biff in Origin 3 if Reid Marnie comes into the Queensland team?
Well, it would exacerbate the situation.
Someone might be inclined to shove a fist down his throat.
He's a beauty.
Geez, Ponga, it's exciting. A team with Walsh and Ponga in the same 17.
Yeah.
Can you see Ponga sort of coming? I don't think they'll wait till the last 20 minutes to use Ponga, do you? I think they'll try and use him.
He's not there to warm the bench.
No. Well, there'll be a role to get him in before half time.
He'll have to have a plan. His debut game, he played lock forward, and he nearly pulled it out of the fire for him. He was outstanding. I think. Yeah, look, in your most important battle, throw your last man in. It's an old saying, and they're throwing their last man in. They've picked everyone they can that's ready to go.
Except David Fifita.
They didn't pick David Fifita. There's obviously something in the back of Billy's mind there that he's not comfortable with. They've gone for the very reliable, capable, and picked him in the back row. Where did he was on the bench last time, wasn't he? So
played on the wing for the Warriors at the weekend.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. He is versatile, but he's a premiership winner and he's played Origin winning before, so they've gone for experience there. It's going to be a completely different sort of game. I think this game. Yeah, I think the first 20 minutes, I wouldn't miss it. I just wouldn't miss it. I think this could be extraordinary in the first 20 minutes. And anything could happen from there. Anything could happen there.
So we're going to come back Tuesday next week and do a preview of the decider, which is, every decider is anticipated, but this has the hallmarks of one of the absolute classics at a sold-out Suncorp, but desperate New South Wales under Michael Maguire,
Well, Queensland have won 2 in a row, the last 2. New South Wales has to win this. This is just... We can't let Queensland get on another run. Like, I've still got nightmares over that when they won 8 in a row, or 10 out of 11 or something or other.
Yeah, I think it was they won 3 after, so it's 11 out of 12, that one.
Is it?
Yep.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
do you think,
not good.
We will do our preview, but do you think they'll win, New South Wales?
Yeah.
You do?
I do.
Wow.
I think game 2 was too dominant. I think it was too dominant. Right at the start of the series, I thought Munster was a huge loss for Queensland. And out of everyone else in the Queensland at the moment, I'm so glad he's not there for game 3. Well, I'm not glad he's there because we want all the best players there, but from New South Wales' perspective, I think Munster is a huge loss for Queensland in this series. A huge loss. And
so is Tino.
Yeah, well, Tino, but you can bring forwards in, but Munster, there's only one Munster. There's only one Cameron Munster. And I think he was vital to their chances.
Played golf with Cam Munster the day after Origin 2 in Melbourne.
Did you?
A couple of groups of us went down and had a hit at Yarra Yarra.
Oh, did you?
He plays golf like he plays footy.
Does he? Erratic?
ADD.
Erratic,
Yeah.
but brilliant.
Just wants to get out of the cart and hit it. Doesn't want to think about it. Just wants to keep hitting it.
He could play
Cam,
with Donald.
take a breath.
He should play with Donald Trump.
Geez, that would be a pairing. They'd just be rapping to each other. All right, so a preview of Origin 3 next Tuesday for our listeners. Big news with Parramatta. Jason Ryles has been appointed as their new head coach. I thought his comments around the club and where they should be positioned in the context of the premiership was interesting. He said this is essentially the Broncos of the West. You've spoken a lot about I don't know whether it's been dereliction of the junior development process there at Parramatta. They outside of Penrith, they have a gigantic junior league, yet you don't see a lot of those local juniors come through and have successful NRL careers. It's a fertile ground for rugby league fans and obviously a well-resourced club. Jason Ryles is excited to be going there on that basis, but he has a job to do from the ground up, it would seem.
Yeah, he does. Well, the club has a job to do from the ground up, looking into the future. It's an interesting appointment, and it's Jason Ryles. It's a very strong club, very strong financially, and it does have a great junior base. It needs to get itself organised for what it wants to look like down the track. But Jason Ryles, of all the players, of all the coaches that would have applied or they've looked at who had never coached NRL before, so you're looking at rookie coaches, he is as well credentialed, if not better credentialed than any of them. So the appointment is no surprise. The surprise for me was that he was always kind of touted as the next Melbourne Storm coach. Craig Bellamy has showed no signs of sort of giving it away at the moment.
And with AI, he'll be coaching for the next 130 years.
And whether or not, Jason's just got impatient or he's decided, no, now's the time, I can't wait another year, or this is an opportunity too good to refuse. They do have all the elements of a successful team right at the moment. I mean, their position on the ladder is just, it defies all belief and all common sense. 2 years ago, they played in the grand final. I just don't understand why it's got to where it is right at the moment. So there can be, some low-hanging fruit there to get things improved very, very quickly and show improvement in the club, which will look good on his resume when he gets there. So I don't think it'll be a very difficult job to improve the performances of this group of players right now, but it's what the next group of players and what their future looks like that's going to is the job of the club as a whole, not so much the job of the head coach.
That being said, that roster does look like it needs a freshen up. Is that a fair comment?
Well, you're only saying that because it's sitting in 17th position.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm saying it because you have a look at the average age of that team, particularly in the pack, and they're all getting on.
Yeah, but our better players today are older. Our better players are all over 30. Like back, 30 years ago when you reached 30, they were pensioning you off. You were gone. Now, the best players in the key positions right across the game are all over 30 years of age.
So you don't think that pack in particular needs?
No, I don't.
Needs reworking.
No, I don't. I think it's a good pack. I think those two boys should be playing Origin.
Who?
Campbell Gillard and Junior Paulo. They're Origin class players.
Well, they haven't played like it this year.
Well, I know we can all see that, but there is no reason for them not to be playing at that level. There is something else going on or has gone on.
Yeah.
I guess why they've moved the coach and gone down the road they've gone. There's plenty of talent in that club. They should not be running last.
No, they shouldn't be.
Give me a break. They should not be running last. There is plenty of talent in that roster.
Has Blaze Talangi re-signed yet?
I don't believe so.
Gutho said yesterday, again, he's happy to move positions to accommodate him. Do you think? I think he might be their fullback next year.
I don't think Blaze Talangi is a fullback.
You don't see that's where he fits into that team?
I don't think so.
Well, if he stays there, he might not be there yet.
He has showed he can play there on a couple of one-off appearances, but there were also some parts of that game too where he was obviously not a trained fullback. He came through to junior rep football as a centre, dynamic centre, a little bit of 5'8". He can obviously play anywhere. He's played on the wing and did that with distinction. He's still only very young. And Parramatta getting out of the cellar doesn't depend on Blaze Talangi.
No, it doesn't. But I've highlighted him because he is someone who's come through that system, and they would dearly hate to lose him to another club, which continues a pattern.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult one for them. in retaining him. Yeah. I hope they do. I'd hate to see him leave the club, but it's going to be difficult for them. If he was going to stay, he would have stayed by now.
So can I read between the lines? There's other clubs who are falling over to try and get him. Is that what you mean?
I'm sure there's plenty of them.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of them. But, I'm looking at him and saying, well, in what position would you buy him? I don't think I'd buy him as a fullback right at the moment with the sort of money he's going to command.
Would you buy him as a 5/8?
No.
No.
You'd buy him as an outside back, and he's still in the development phase of his career. I know he's come on the scene very, very quickly, but young fellas do that. He's playing in a good... Look, you're playing outside Mitchell Moses and Dylan Brown. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that at club level. How long they're going to be with the club, you don't know. I know they've all signed contracts, but they've all got options to get out. You hear all sorts of rumours. Hopefully the Jason Ryles appointment quells all the rumours, that they find some unity and they find their best form and give the Parramatta fans something to cheer for. But they're much, much better than their position on the ladder.
Oh, no,
much better.
Yeah.
Much better. They should not be where they are.
Has not worked at all this year for them.
Yeah, and people will start to pick away at them and find fault and find this and find that. No. There's no excuse for them being where they are.
Hey, what about Brian Smith jumping up out of the woodwork?
Yeah.
Did he really apply?
Hey?
Did Brian Smith really apply?
Joe Biden's running for president.
Joe Biden applied. Brian Smith. Well, he fell over.
Brian Smith, who has a great history with the club, and Brian Smith was a great coach.
Yeah, of course he was.
In a number of clubs. And Brian Smith is a development coach. I think Brian Smith can see what the club needs and knows that he can provide it. I could still see a place for Brian Smith at Parramatta Eels.
I was just wondering that. Do you think maybe he applied for the job thinking, I'm available here if you want me in a senior overseeing sort of
I don't
role?
know what he applied for. My understanding of the situation was that they contacted him about potentially being a life member, which I believe he politely thought that, well, that should be for players, not so much for coaches, et cetera, et cetera. That was the story they spun out. But it's later been revealed that he did show some interest, and he's certainly got a lot to offer any football club on the score of experience and development and pathways players and all that sort of thing as well. I don't know whether, and with coaching the way it is today, head coaching is very different. It's the quality of your staff that makes a big difference. It's the knowledge and the coachability of your coaches. They do a lot of the hands-on stuff. Your squads are so big and your staff is so big. I've spoken about this a number of times.
Would a rookie like Jason Ryles benefit from having Brian Smith in there somewhere?
I think he would benefit from having Brian Smith oversee the future of the club, the development of the club into the future, the transition of younger fellas through and developing up pathways and systems to ensure a steady stream of young talent coming through so that they've always got options when senior players are retiring or they're losing players or the players are commanding too much money, your salary cap starts to get stretched a little bit. In trying to hold on to the era that they had. Remember, they made a grand final 2 years ago, so what happens around that time is players become more valuable. You tend to hold on to that a little bit longer, and that's why these players get big contracts. And then you're thinking, well, that all feels good at the moment, but what's that going to look like in 3 or 4 years? You're signing them for 3 or 4 years. What do they look like in 3 or 4 years' time? And what are they worth if you have to sell them or trade them out? The salary cap management is such an intricate thing these days and so delicate because of the limited player pool that we've got. And we're stretching it even further. We're going to go to 18 teams shortly and probably 20 teams by 2030. So we've got to find more players. And the difference between NRL and the New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg competitions has never been greater than what it is right at the moment. It's never been greater. It's a chasm. So it's not easy for clubs to rebuild their roster these days.
You got any Brian Smith stories? You'd have coached against him for decades.
Coached against him for a long time,
Did you get on good with him?
Yeah.
Quirky bloke.
Always got on good with him. Yeah, he was quirky. Always got on good with him. He was very different sort of coach to me, very different philosophy.
Love the text message, Smithy.
Very different styles. I don't know how he...
I used to harass him with texts.
I never actually heard him speak to teams or anything like that, but a lot of players that I respected over the years are devotees of Brian Smith's coaching. A lot of staff that still work in the game today are devotees of Brian Smith's ways and what he did for him. He was a brilliant coach.
I think Trent Robinson was under him for a lot of the time, wasn't he?
Well,
at Newcastle.
Trent was at Newcastle with him, and when Brian coached the Roosters, Trent was his assistant coach there. Yeah. He took Roosters to a grand final, and then the next year, not so good, and lost his job. And then Trent Robinson came back. Brian Smith, I always rated as a very, very good coach. He was very different to me. He had a very different philosophy on the game.
What was his philosophy?
Not so much a philosophy on coaching and that sort of thing, but philosophies. Yeah, he was. It's difficult to explain, but there are sort of strains in the coaching ranks that emanate down from. It's like a family tree. Of where you came from. You sort of got your Tim Sheenses, you got your Wayne Bennett's, you got your Warren Ryans, and your Bob Fultons, and so those really dominant coaches of that era. Then the players who played under them and the people who came through, like Jack Gibson, for as great as Jack Gibson was, and everyone renounces him as the greatest coach in history, or people will say that. Not a lot of Jack's players went out to be coaches. There were an extraordinary number of Warren Ryans people went out to be coaches. An extraordinary number of Tim Sheenses people went out to be coaches.
He was a hit and run. He was a sort of gun for hire, Jack Gibson, was he? He'd come in 2 or 3 years, leave.
He wouldn't coach anymore in any one place for more than 3 years.
Yeah.
And never did.
Here's a good question. Who do you think, who are the best examples of coaches that have left an imprint by way of players going on to, like that family tree idea? Who's spawned the most coaches or had the greatest influence?
Warren Ryan is the greatest coach in rugby league history, bar none. All right, and head and shoulders above anyone else who's ever coached the game. For sheer influence and longevity, a lot of what we see in the game today, and it's obviously a very different game to what it was back in the 80s when he was at the height of his powers, but a lot of what we see in the game today has emanated down the family tree from that era and from what he did. From defensive techniques, defensive positioning, structure of attacking play, the plays that we use. It's sort of all, it's the embryo stage, but I can still recognise it in a lot of what's happens today. And obviously there are other coaches that have put their splash on it and,
And the rules have changed.
The rules have changed. Well, as he said at the time, the rules had to change to beat him. Like he used to tell this story about Walter Lindrum, the great billiards player. And he used to talk about nursery cannons. I can still tell the story. The billiards, which was...
he loved his billiards.
Yeah, billiards. And they couldn't beat Walter Lindrum. They had to change the rules to beat him.
Why they how they changed the rules?
Warren always claimed they had to change the rules to beat him.
He's the Walter Lindrum of coaching.
He was the Walter Lindrum of coaching. I say that, and I'm happy to back it up, but so far as sheer influence on the game, some of it bad as well, but so far as sheer influence on the game, I don't think there's been any more coach who gave enlightenment to the game, who had a long-lasting effect on the way the game would be played into the future and how rules were then changed or whatever along the way to do it. So
a forward thinker.
He was before his time.
What did you just say? Something about a breaker? What did you say?
What's that?
Walter Lindrum, the
nursery cannons.
What's a nursery cannon?
Well, you got the red. You got a white ball, and he's got a white ball, and there's a red ball. You get points for how many you can and all that. But it's you get them up the end of the table, and you just keep clinking them together, like you keep getting the points. I can explain it better. Yeah, nursery cannons. And
so they changed that
billiards. They changed the rules to beat him. Yeah. Because he'd rack up enormous scores and no one would ever get back to the table or something. That was his story anyway. He usually told it to me over a few beers, so I mightn't have been listening.
Loved a beer. Probably still does.
Warren those days used to go to the pub and have a few beers after training, and he would stand at the bar and hold court, and we'd all go around the back and play cards, and then someone would have to go to the bar. We'd always send a different person every time, because when you went there, he'd keep you for an hour talking football. He'd be moving.
But that would be fantastic to sit there and talk footy for an hour with Warren Ryan.
I spent so much time talking to Warren Ryan about football, just about the theory of playing rugby league. Like back in the early 80s, he was telling me the perfect game was an 11-man game.
Yeah.
And what the athlete was going to look like into the future.
Was he right?
And how they'll change. Yeah, 100%. How they changed the rules. They went from a 5-metre rule to a 10-metre rule because of the influence of Warren Ryan.
Why was his influence instrumental in that?
Just defensively. The fact that we have left and right players nowadays, all right, we have done for a number of decades, but it never used to be that way. players didn't play left and right back in the old day. You had forwards and backs, and everyone went everywhere.
Yeah.
You weren't designated a left and right position. But Warren had a defensive strategy where we were constantly adjusting and presenting a defence line that would meet the demands of what the opposition would throw at us, as you'd say. And it was all around having your athletes in athletic positions and your bigger players in other positions, where defences were never like that back in the 60s and 70s. He sat behind the goalpost, he said, for 4 seasons, watching how tries were created and tries were scored, and how he could stop it and how he could pull apart opposition teams, and simply by dividing the horizontal part of the field, the lateral part of the field into thirds. And he was the first one that used points on the field and the movement of players, athletic players, to play against non-athletic players.
So what was the defensive line like? So now we've got dedicated positions in the defensive line.
So what happened? What happened in the defence back then? In the defensive line back then, you just line up forwards and backs.
Right.
The forwards would line up wherever the scrum was or wherever the tap was being taken.
So the wider you got the backs.
Even from kickoffs. I can remember as a kid, when the other team was going to kick off, you'd say, which way are you kicking, mate? That way. All right, forwards, backs.
Really?
100%. 100%.
Why did they tell you where they were kicking?
So you can get your forwards set. And their forwards would get set over there. And
Wow.
And the forwards would hit it up a few times and then they pass the ball out.
Prehistoric.
Yeah. The game, it's different postcode. Honestly, it's a different postcode, the game back then. But as part of his defensive system, when the ball was played in the middle of the field, so if the ball was played under the black dot, we used to call it black. When the ball was played at black, so we might have started with all our forwards over here and all our backs there, right? But as the ball was crept across the field at points on the field, we would move players back to the blind side, what they should call it the blind side. We would move players around to make sure that our bigger, slower players were always around to play the ball, and our athletic players were always out on the edges, And they, so what would happen is, by the time it got to the black dot, we'd actually be in the positions we are today. Right winger, left winger, right centre, left centre, right back row, left back row, a lock 5'8", et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
In those days, the lock defender behind the line, or the halfback defender behind the line. The halfback would be a cover defender, or the lock would be a cover defender. But basically, and what other coaches were looking at, they couldn't really work out how we got into that position or why we got into that position. So damn it, we'll just start in that position. And then from there, they decided to attack from those positions. And that's where left and right started.
Wow.
And coaches, not really knowing how he did it or why he did it, everyone learned over a period of time because all these players went off to other clubs, but basically the cookie cutter copy type mentality kicked in. All right, well, let's just stand there because that defence is too hard to break, and now we'll learn to attack from those positions. Brian Smith was one of the ones that really, more than any coach at his era, particularly early, that's why St George made 2 grand finals in a row, 92, 93. He was really good at the left and right attacking, the new left and right attacking regime that was on in those days, and he was very effective with those. Players having designated lanes. Now, I personally don't like it, and it's been to the detriment of the game, but everyone does it because it's actually really effective. And I didn't particularly like left and right halves. I didn't particularly like left and right back rowers, and I didn't particularly like left and right centre. In the old days, the centres used to sweep together. It was a centre pairing.
Yes, that's
a centre
right.
pairing. They were a great combination. Now
inside and outside centre.
Well, nowadays they only see each other in the car park.
That's right.
Before training.
Is it true?
Or at the team dinner. They don't actually pass the ball to each other ever.
No.
But in the old days, fullback chiming into the back line, making the extra man. Where do you hear that anymore? See, all your commentary lines have been taken away from you.
I never say that.
Yeah.
But
well, you don't say that anymore because
they do chime in, though. They
chime around.
Yeah. Is it true that, I know it's made me think of this, that Tim Sheens brought Ricky Stewart to the league because of Warren Ryan's defence, didn't he?
I don't know. I think, I don't know who recruited Ricky Stewart. I remember seeing him for the first time in rugby league, but he was very young when he came with Tim.
I thought I heard that he brought him because he thought he needed a long passing game to try and breach Warren Ryan's defence.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
What's the next big evolution then?
It's hard to say. It usually comes with rules. I think around rules. But and everyone in the game talks about it. Well, what's the next thing? It's kind of been very, very similar type football from all teams for so long now. It's just the quality of the player that you got. I don't think we develop playmakers as well as we used to. I don't think we develop halves. In the academy programs that I've liked to install, I've tried to encourage our coaches in lower grades not to play like NRL teams. I wanted to see more instinctive stuff and more, not so many second man plays and structured plays and all that, because I like to see what they've actually got.
Sam Walker's been very effective playing that style of footy this year.
Yeah, and most Queensland produce more than we do. In that, I think the Queensland development systems aren't quite as NRL conscious as what ours are. I think a lot of our junior rep coaches coach them like NRL teams, or as they think an NRL team should be coached, and I try to discourage that or get away from that as much as possible. I like footballers being coached by footballers at that age when they're coming out of junior league football into the upper tiers of development. But getting back to the point, and there's been many, many great coaches over the years, and they'll all say they've been influenced by someone. But I think this game, more than anyone, has been influenced by what Warren Ryan introduced to the game back then. And remember, in 1981, he took Newtown to a grand final, and Newtown was just a mismatch of blokes that he pulled together from other clubs, and he brought them all with a strategic purpose and went through it to what no one thought was going to be a grand final appearance, and nearly won a premiership. And
was that a bit of Moneyball, was it?
Well, there was no salary caps back then, and it would have been Moneyball because Newtown didn't have much money, but he found very like-minded students of the game. Your Phil Sigsworths and your Mick Ryans and your Ken Wilsons and those sort of Barry Jensens. And he found a group of players that were prepared to buy into Warren's philosophy. And honestly, back then, and even going through when he came and won premierships at 84, 85, I think we beat teams without them really knowing why.
Yeah, right.
And then the game gradually starts to catch up. And then the rules start to catch up. And then you've got to go again. And I think from that, Warren Ryan produced an extraordinary number of coaches that went on to coach at a high level. And I think Tim Sheens has done the same. Tim Sheens, when he went from Penrith to Canberra, he coached at Penrith, I think, in 84, went to Canberra about 87, 88. 88.
Yeah, well, Bennett and Ferner were the first coaches.
Bennett and Ferner went to the grand final in 87, and Tim went there in 88. And when he went there, I think they'd had a coach, I think Alan McMahon had gone down that way. And right. Alan McMahon was a Warren Ryan devotee, and he'd take a lot of Warren's philosophies down there. And Tim got down there and listened to the way the players were communicating and talking, and I think it was an education for him too. And I think as players sort of left that Newtown Canterbury, production line and went off to do their own thing, stories, and everyone's looking for new information and everything like that. I think that's where it sort of filtered out. Well, certainly that part of the family tree filtered out into rugby league circles, and not all that Warren Ryan's methods were good for the game either. They were good for winning, but they weren't necessarily good for the product, which is why I think rules changed over a period of time, and he would admit to that. But so far as making the game a science, making the game a game of chess, I don't think there was ever anything like him prior to his time.
Brilliant. Love it when we go down these dark alleys.
Jack gave coaching its profile. And he was obviously a great people person and a great people manager, and his teams were very, very different to Warren's. And they had a great rivalry during the period where Warren had some teams that could compete with them. Parramatta won premierships in 81, 82, 83. Warren won in 84, 85.
Yeah.
So they sort of dominated the scene during that period.
And Parramatta in 86 won. I'm sure Gibson's fingerprints were still on that team.
Yeah, well, John Maney coached that side, but it was pretty much the same side. It was 4-2. I mean, there was nothing in it in the grand final. And that's just where the two clubs had got to. But, so far as influence over the way the game is actually played, the nuances of the game, Jack had his ways, but the actual coaching of the game, Peter Kelly described it good one. He said Warren didn't coach you to be a player. He coached you to be a coach. He coached you to think about the game. He coached you to think about not what happened, but what could happen based on that. How can we recreate that? If we saw something that just happened instinctively in a game, how can we recreate that? How can we make that happen again to expose a weakness in the opposition team? How do we recreate that that system. And I think a lot of the basic stuff, the fundamental stuff that he taught us, should be still very much of the fundamental education of young players coming through today. Like every year, even though I'm too old to do it and demonstrate it, every year I'll take one session with the junior rep players, like the 16s and 18s, one session a year.
Do you?
Yeah, just once a year, just to...
What do you do?
To instill some fundamental stuff, but just so that I can sleep and know that at least they've heard it from somewhere, and the junior coaches are so dedicated these days, but it needs to be about development, not necessarily about winning. I need to get them an education in how to run their plays and think about the football and everything as well.
So you're still a coach?
No, I'm not.
Well, you are. You just admitted it.
No, I'm not.
On the record.
Way too old.
Gus is still coaching.
No, I take a training session. That's not coaching.
Sam,
it's not what you think. It's different.
Don't backtrack. Sam,
no, I'm not backtracking.
Oh, I'm kidding. Sam on Ask Gus wants to know if you ever got asked to coach Australia.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Go on.
No.
Why?
Oh, it's a long story.
Well, it's your podcast. Away you go.
I don't need to tell it.
Is that a hard no?
It's a hard no.
When was this?
Late 90s.
Wow. And why didn't you do it?
Well, that's the part I'm not going to tell.
Did you get asked to do the job, or did you get it, or was it available?
Both.
Right. That's disappointing. Vince wants to know what you think the difference is between a 5'8" and a halfback these days.
Depends on who's playing 5'8" and who's playing halfback.
It's cryptic time.
It is. It's an individual thing. I think from the structure of the teams these days, they're pretty much left and right sided, the same thing as each other. That's a good argument. You can play the game today with two halfbacks. You can't play it with two 5'8s if that's what they genuinely are.
Saw that with Parro when Moses was out, didn't we?
Yeah. You need a game. I still believe you need a game manager. Your team needs. I'm the sort of thing. One little ship, one little captain. There has to be a leader in what we're doing out there, and it needs to emanate from the number 7. So I like to have a dominant number 7, and then marry that up with the types of players around them that they have. And the better teams, the ones that win premierships, have got that. That's what they've got. Their number 7 is not a number 6. Their number 7 is a leader. He's a number 7. He's a Nathan Cleary, or he's a Jerome Hughes, or he's a those sort of blokes. And if you haven't got them, you're not winning premierships. It's as simple as that.
Jen wants to know if you think the Dolphins are going to struggle in the run to the finals without Jeremy Marshall-King. Now, he has improved exponentially over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy was at the Bulldogs when I first got there. But when I first got there, it was during COVID. So I think it was 21. So I joined the club, but they were all up in Queensland during COVID. And Jeremy wasn't playing. Jeremy had, I think, a shoulder reconstruction or something at the time, and wasn't even touted back then as a hooker. I think he'd had a couple of games, but it was never really seriously considered. He was more seen as a half 5'8" type. But it was never really thought at the time that he would be a long-term hooker, which is why we went and signed Reid Marnie when he became available. Well, of course, Reid didn't come for 12 months, and Jeremy started off the season, got his injury right, started off the season as the hooker, and was our player of the year.
Yeah.
But by then, we'd already bought Reid Marnie,
yeah.
And, Jeremy got a really good offer to go to the Dolphins, and I'm very, very happy for him, and he's been outstanding for them, and he's developed into a fine player. But I had no idea when we signed Reid Marnie that Jeremy Marshall-King was going to develop into that sort of player. Great bloke, really good club man, and he was our club man of the year that year, and he was terrific. But and Reid Marnie's been outstanding for us as well. But Jeremy has really found a niche there as a dummy half, and he's been great for the Dolphins. Is he out for the year, is he?
Around 25.
Oh, well, it's a long time, but he's certainly been a... Who will play there? Probably Plath, will he?
Donahue, I think.
All right, okay.
Let me check. In fact, why don't we have a look when we do our preview of a...
Yeah, but he'll be missed. There's no doubt he'll be missed, but, they got the old coach there. He'll find a way.
We'll do our preview in a minute, actually. Our Six Tackle Trivia Olympic-themed question. I'm very, very confident you'll get this one right, Gus. Who won Australia's only Olympic gold medal in weightlifting, and where did they do it? A break while Gus ponders the question, and I'm heading off to the Olympics Monday week. It's less than 2 weeks now. Very, very excited to be heading there. A break and back with our preview of round 19. Gee, the season's got away. So in addition to the swimming, I've been handed the task of calling some weightlifting in Paris because we have a gun lady weightlifter called Eileen Sikamatana who has a chance to win gold for Australia.
Yep.
It's only ever been done once before by an Australian at the Olympics, an Olympic weightlifting gold medal. Who was it?
Was the big bloke. Well, he was huge with the curly hair.
Yep.
I can see him.
Yep. He's become a tuna fisherman in his retirement.
He fined down. He lost about 70 kilos or something.
Yep.
Didn't he? Yeah, I know. I can see him. I can't remember the name.
Starts with D.
I was just going to say Dominic or something like that. Or no, I can't. I can see him. I can see him. I can even see the lift. I remember. I can't remember the name.
Dean Lucan.
Dean Lucan. That's right. I was going to say DeLuca. That's what I was going to say, DeLuca.
That's his nickname.
Because we were one of the first clubs ever in 1991 at the Panthers. We had a full-time weights coach. I got a full-time weights coach in, and I put a gym in the Leeds club at Penrith just for the players. There was a part of the club that hadn't been rebuilt yet. Was the old the Evans Theatre there, which when they built the club, they didn't have time to finish it, so it was just an empty shell. So I went around and begged, borrowed and stole and got some weights and put them in this thing. And a bloke by the name of Luca Borragini, who was the Commonwealth Games, I think he was a Commonwealth Games lifter, but he was the Commonwealth Games lifting coach at that time, and may well still be today. He came in, and so every time I go to think, I think of Luca Borragini, but he was, yeah.
Dean Lucan.
Dean Lucan.
Where was it? Can you remember what games?
Would have been late 80s?
Early 80s.
Early 84.
84, Los Angeles. Well done.
Yeah.
And he was helped, and I mean this with the greatest of respect, he was helped by the boycott.
Yeah.
There was a boycott.
They were the dark days, weren't they?
I know. There you go, Dean Lucan. And Dean Lucan is actually...
He lost like 70 kilos when he retired, didn't he?
Yeah. Yep. He's had a very colourful post-Olympic life, and he's actually a mentor to Eileen Sikamatana, who's going to be lifting for gold in Paris. Good. So there you are. All right, round 19, Dolphins Rabbits here on 9 tomorrow night. Of course, cognizant that we have our Origin players absent, and this one is at Dolphin Oval. So no Hammer, but Trey Fuller comes in. They've still got Nicarima. They've still got Katoa. In fact, Plath is playing at hooker. Gus, you're right. And Donahue, he's injured as well. Right. So Plath's playing hooker. Bromwich is playing lock. And Sean O'Sullivan gets a recall. We haven't seen him since very early in the season. He'll be on the bench. No Latrell, no Murray for Souths, who are in good form. Was it 5 in a row?
5 in a row.
Yeah.
5 in a row. And Cody Walker and... Jack Whiten have certainly provided some impetus for that, joining together in the halves, and obviously with Latrell. But Latrell wasn't there for all 5 wins. They won a couple before he got back from suspension.
And Gray's a live wire. He's very dangerous.
He is. That's a really hard one. Because I've just got great respect for the Dolphins at home. But probably a couple of their strike players aren't there, obviously. I will go with Rabbit.
Rabbit, okay. Friday night footy, we head down to Cronulla to the Bermuda Triangle, which claimed another victim in Nicho Hynes this week. 8 weeks, Gus.
Yeah, it's a bad injury.
Surgery. There's a fracture there.
They said he did it land. He
well.
jumped for a high ball and landed.
Yeah.
Just rolled his ankle. But he's got a fracture and he's got syndesmosis.
Syndesmosis, not Liz Frank. Yes.
Yeah,
I get them mixed up.
syndesmosis.
So Atkinson gets a recall at 6, who's been exceptional for them filling in. Trindle goes to halfback, and whilst it's not Nicho, they do have 2 recognised halves there.
Now, you asked the question about halfbacks before. Braden Trindle is a 7. He's not a 6. He's a 7. He's coping as a 6, playing with Nicho, but it's not his go. His job, his actual trade is to be a 7. So it'll be really interesting to see how he goes in that commanding position, and whether or not he's got the confidence to take over the team and say, well, this is where we're going and how we're going to do it. I think he's got the abilities to do it. I've always liked Braden as a player. I think it's a really good chance for him to show his wares while Nicho's out for the next couple of months. And put it this way, he's going to have to show his wares in that respect as well. So Tigers are obviously capable of their great moments in games, and they can trouble any side, it seems, for a certain period of time. But putting in the 80-minute performance is difficult. Sharks off the back of a couple of losses, you'd have to think they'll get this right. I'm going to back Braden Trendall to steer them home.
All right, against the Tigers, who were most competitive on varying. Well,
they were
in spurts last week, but their defence just wasn't up to it. Titans, Para, 5:30 game Saturday. This one up on the Gold Coast. Jaden Campbell comes back at 5/8, and now Charlie Geimer, he went good for Para. He's found his way into the starting team this week at Lock. How good was he?
He was terrific. From Temora.
Yeah,
the Temora Tornado. Liam Martin's from Temora.
I know. So is Trent Barrett.
Some of his. Well, Liam Martin's related to Trent Barrett.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. I believe. Yeah.
Trent got the looks in that family. Tighten up there, but a lot of points to be scored in that game, I'm tipping.
You know, Liam Martin has got an IQ that's off the charts. You know, he's highly intelligent.
Yeah, I think I knew that. And I can pick that up with the way he talks.
He's highly intelligent.
Yeah.
Like, super intelligent.
Yeah, he's an impressive bloke.
Yeah. Super, super intelligent. He doesn't play like an intelligent person, does he?
Well,
he's just a brute.
If you're stopping the count after 2 Origin games, he's just about New South Wales Player of the Series.
Yeah. Well,
his other back row mates been going good too.
He'll relish out there this week. Yeah, but I believe he and Trent are related through some way. Eels, I just don't know. No Mitchell Moses. Titan.
Broncos, Dragons, Suncorp State. Oh, go on. Saturday night, Suncorp. So Sailor comes in for Walsh at fullback. Josh Rogers is back because they've lost Jock Madden on top of Adam Reynolds. Still a fairly formidable pack. And the Dragons, no Ben Hunt, so Marshke into the lineup. They do get Jaden Sewer back, who was left out for Queensland. But Suncorp Stadium.
Good little player, Marshke. He's actually a very dominant New South Wales Cup player. I think he played for Norse in the grand final last year. And Jason Taylor gave him a real rap. A really intelligent player, knows his game really well. Has never really solidified an NRL position anywhere, but certainly as a New South Wales Cup player, he's been a long time performer.
Last time he played, now this might not have been last time, but anyway, when the Dragons went to Penrith and won during Origin, he was halfback and he was sensational. Yeah. He's been great whenever he's got an NRL chance for the Dragons this year.
Yeah, Panthers played without their replies.
Yes.
Look, I think Dragon can win that. But, well, the game is important for both of them. Both are still running in the 8. They're kind of equal on the ladder there. And the loser of this game is just going to be it's going to be hard. You wouldn't want to be the loser of this game. Bronco, Dragon. Yeah, I'll go with Bronco.
Okay. Then Sunday footy from Brookie. Well, we were talking about Tom Trbojevich's change of position last week. Lasted a week. He's back at fullback and he's captain.
So he should be.
Yep. So Jamie Humphries is going to play halfback.
Good player.
Yep.
Good player.
Okay.
He's actually been playing a bit of dummy half in New South Wales Cup for a while. And I think he's signed to go elsewhere now, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know where. I think that's right.
Did he go to Sharks or Dragons? I believe he's signed somewhere else anyway.
Okay.
For next year. But he's a good young player. I've been watching him for a couple of years. I really like him.
No Ponga.
Good goal kicker too.
No Gagai for Newcastle.
Yeah. 4 Pines Park, Sydney. Tom Trbojevic had a game under his belt. Who's playing in the halves for Manly? Luke Brooks.
And Jamie Humphries, we just mentioned.
Yeah, Jamie. Oh, he's going to play in the halves. Yep. I'm going to go Sea Eagle at home on a Sunday afternoon.
Just quickly, just before we wrap up, Jack Cogger has been in and out of that Newcastle team, finds himself in 19 again. He played in the grand final for Penrith. Where's he at? He seems to be out of favour.
Yeah, well, but it's a lot of these things for these kids is time and place. Penrith was the right time and right place for him. He was actually signed to play with Toowoomba when Penrith picked him up.
Really?
To play that season with Panthers.
That's the Bulldog feeder club.
Yeah, I think he came down and had some training sessions with the Bulldogs as part of the Toowoomba arrangement they had at the time.
Right. They played the grand final.
Yeah, Jack had sort of, but was given the opportunity to go in and fill that understudy role to Nathan and did extremely well and then got on the field in grand final and had a big influence. He's a good player. But they've moved their halves around so often this year. They've dropped Hastings, they've dropped Tyson Gandil, they've gone with different permutations of that. They've had a win last week. I like Gamble as a player.
He's injured at the moment.
Yeah. Who's playing 5'8" this week?
Will Price.
Oh, right, the kid from England. Yeah. Good player, very instinctive sort of player. Not sure he's NRL ready at the moment, but they've had a win with him last week, so good luck to him.
All right, so an abbreviated round, no Origin players, but you'll still get your 3 games on 9.
What did we think? We said rabbit.
We said rabbit.
Rabbit. Shark. Titan. I don't know, Bronco or Drag. Bronco, Seagull.
Very good. So next Tuesday, we'll be here to have a look at Origin 3. It promises to be an absolute epic. And you'll watch it all live and free here on 9 and 9 Now.
Stuff you, Jack Slazenger. You took me cash.
I wonder how much he won. Fantastic. Let's talk to you next week, and we'll be back for more Six Tackles next Tuesday.
This year, NRL on 9 is your one-stop shop for all footy.
That's right, Freddie. Not about the highlights. Action. 7 days a week.
Bill and Gus podcast, get that on your drive on the way home. Immortal Behaviour. Grab a seat on the couch for that. And, of course, my favourite, Freddie in the Own.
The best footy brains, the biggest games.
Don't trust the algorithm. Subscribe to NRL on 9 and get all your entertainment there.